Welcome to the Inland Valley Storytellers monthly story swap meeting. My name is John St. Clair, and I am your Zoom host, and I am the leader of this group. And on this cold and drizzly night, we don't have a whole lot of people here. There's 4 here, and we have 3 on Zoom. And I don't know how many stories. Do you have a story tonight, Chris? Do you want to start or do you want to do it later? Okay. Okay, so Nick, do you want to start?
All right.
Let me switch the spotlight. Oh man, this chair wiggles. Place spotlight. And I'm going to turn you around so we can see you.
Well, one of the reasons I'm wearing this t-shirt is that I think the first time I told this story was at one of the CTMS Summer Solstice festivals. And this is one that I used with kids a lot at the library around St. Patrick's Day. But I'll give you the more adult version because there's some explanation I left out with the kids. Now, there were 2 great heroes in the traditions of old Ireland. There was Finn McCool, and he was the leader of a warrior band, and he may have actually have been a real person because the stories told about him seem to turn up not only in Irish tradition, but seem to be in some of the Norse traditions that from the same period. The other was Cuchulainn, and the difference was that Finn McCool was a hero of just mortal blood and just he was so good at everything that he was famous. And Cuchulainn was all of that plus being descended from the gods of old Ireland. So imagine the difference between, say, Perseus and Hercules. And that's what you'll hear as far as the stories of Finn. But for some reason, the later stories of Finn McCool and Cuchulainn kept exaggerating Cuchulainn more and more. And so the later stories, he's not only all of that, but a giant as well. And this one is from that tradition. For you see, Finn McCool was a hero and a leader of heroes. To get into his band of heroes, you had to be able to pick up a spear on one side of Ireland, throw it across Ireland, and be there to catch it when it came down. They were that good. One of the tests for entry into the Fiannan was that you had to be able to run through a rainstorm and dodge each raindrop coming down before it could hit you. They were that good. But there was one man in all of Ireland that even Finn McCool feared to face, and that was Cuchulainn. To give you an idea of his size, he built the Giant's Causeway, that are the row of stones that run between Ireland and Scotland. He'd done that so he could go there to meet someone to either study from or to marry her. He ended up studying with her. And of course, he used the same stones to walk back from Scotland. But you see, Finn McCool and Cuchulainn shared an interesting trait. They each had magic in their hands. In the case of Cuchulainn, he had lost a finger in a complex accident we won't go into here, but the replacement finger he received stored the strength of the giants. And so he was strong, immensely strong, based on his artificial finger. Finn McCool, on the other hand, had tasted of the salmon of wisdom. And that would have been all right, except he was sometimes unwise in the way he spoke of things. And so it was that he had made a passing comment that a thumbful of wisdom was better than a fingerful of strength. And this had come back to Cuchulainn, and from that point on, they had a feud. But in fact, he'd used that wisdom to marry the smartest woman in all of Ireland. Well, One day, that smart wife came home to find Finn pacing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in their small house. And she finally said, "What are you doing?" And Finn said, "I'm trying to think of a way to defeat Cahulan because he's coming here to battle me. And we've never fought before. We've never even met." His wife said, "We'll think of something," meaning, of course, that she would. And Finn paced back and forth and back and forth, and then they heard it, the sound of footfalls. Now, Cahulan was so big and so solid and so strong that you could hear his footfalls when he was still 10 miles away. So they had time. And Finn's wife said, "Quick, build, hmm, build a baby bed." "What? What? Are you having a baby?" "No, no, no. Build it big, big enough for you to sleep in." Well, Finn was known to be a craftsman and to be able to do things quickly. And so he built a bed, a baby's bed, a full 6.5 feet long. All right. His wife had been busy and had done that. "Now put these on." And there she handed him a baby gown and a baby bonnet big enough to fit Finn McCool himself. "Put these on? Why would it?" And she got that look on her face that all very smart women get. And he knew that he'd better do it because there was some reason that he simply didn't understand yet, not for all the wisdom a magic salmon could provide. He put on the baby bonnet. He put on the baby gown. He climbed into the 6.5 foot long baby bed and waited. And the footfalls came closer and closer and closer till there was a thunderous knock at the door. Well, Finn's wife went and opened the door and looked up and up and up, and sure enough, it was the giant Cahulan himself. "Well, be ready and come in." And she backed out of the doorway, and Cahulan bowed down low enough to come through the door, for the door was the size of a mortal man, not of a giant. And he came inside and said, "Where's Finn McCool?" And his wife said, "Oh, he's not here right now, just me and the baby." And Cahulan looked over, and there was the biggest baby he'd ever seen. "This is the baby?" "Yes, yes. Finn's much bigger, you know." And Cahulan went over. "Hmm, he's big, but don't know if he's going to be much when he grows up. He has an odd look to him." Well, Finn McCool tried very hard not to react to that, but he glowered. Well, Finn's wife went out into the kitchen. In addition to preparing the baby clothes, she had prepared a couple of other things. One of them was some soda bread. She brought it back and she said, "Here, have some refreshment." And Cahulan took the loaf of soda bread that he was handed, and she gave the other one to the baby, Finn McCool in disguise. Well, baby Finn went yum 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 and began eating the soda bread, whereas Cahulan grabbed his and bit into it, and it went clank. For you see, she'd put a frying pan inside the loaf of soda bread. "This is the hardest soda bread I've ever seen. How can that baby eat this stuff?" Well, Finn's wife said, "Well, take a look. He has perfectly normal teeth. You just must be sort of weak about the mouth, eh?" "What? I Here, have some cheese too. And she handed the baby a white cheddar. And she handed Cahulan a big white rock that looked like a white cheddar. And the baby, Finn, went yum, 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 and ate the cheese. And Cahulan bit into the rock. Crack! He was checking to see if that crack was the rock or his teeth. That's the hardest cheese I've ever seen. Well, look, the baby's eating it just fine. You must not be as strong as your reputation says. I think that baby must have special teeth of some kind. And Cahulan walked over and started to pry open the baby's mouth. Said baby Finn. Come on, baby, open your mouth. I want to look at your teeth. And finally, Cahulan had to use the hand with the magic finger of strength to pry open the mouth of the baby. And what do you think Finn did? He latched onto the finger of magic with his normal heroic teeth and pulled it off of Cahulan. And with that, he only had the strength of a relatively normal giant rather than that of a magically enhanced one. Now that Finn could deal with. And he leaped out of bed, tore off the baby clothes, and booted Cahulan out of his home. And don't come back, he said. Of course, he didn't return the magic finger to Cahulan at the time. How he got that back is another story. But he went over, kissed his wife, and realized again that he'd married the smartest woman in all of Ireland. And that's the story of the first meeting of Cahulan and Finn McCool.
Thank you, Nick. That was great. Okay, I need to very quickly here check.
You got some more people.
Yeah, so Ron Chick is here and Adrian joined on Zoom.
And Ron Evans joined on Zoom.
And there's Ron Evans too. So Ron Evans, do you have a story tonight? Oh, you're muted.
I do.
Okay, I put you on spotlight. Go for it.
It's really a night at the opera. It was a special occasion, as every night at the opera really should be, but this was rather extraordinary. The friends had given us 2 tickets to the opera, not just to the opera, this was the Metropolitan in New York, but to the opening night of the season. That's always a special occasion, an extraordinary occasion. And so I came home with the tickets and said to Janet, we had this opportunity. And Janet said that she had to be at a conference that particular night. And so I was on my own. Well, what should I do? Well, ask somebody else to go with you, of course. Well, who should I ask? Well, anybody you want. Thought about Margaret Turner. And Margaret Turner came to mind because she was a parishioner. I was pastoring a small church at the time, and she loved the opera. In fact, I'd called on her on several occasions when she asked if I might share the opera with her in her home. Yes, a widow who loved the opera, no longer went to the opera. It was about an hour and a half drive into the city. But she would listen to recordings of the opera, that's fine. And so invited me to do this on several occasions, the first of which was memorable because I thought it was going to be about a 20-minute whatever, and it turned out to be 3.5 hours of old vinyl records and wonderful music, but very scratchy, and let's just say it was an experience. But every time I did visit her, she talked about the opera and her love for it. So I thought, okay, fine. She did say that she was no longer able to get into the city and go to the opera, But I thought if I asked her, at least I'd get credit for having asked her, and then I could ask somebody else who might be more engaging in the enterprise. So I did ask her. And lo and behold, she said she'd be delighted to go. And she hadn't been for years, but that she was feeling much better and that it would be a happy arrangement. Could I work that out? Well, I have two wonderful tickets, and it's for the opening night. Oh, opening nights. Well, you know, my late husband and I were members of the Opera Guild, and we always just loved the opera, but especially at the beginning of the season. It's rather grand. This was 3 weeks hence, and so there we were. He said yes, I was to be ready, but you know how ladies in the church talk with one another, and of course the word got around that she was going to go to the opera again, and I was to be her escort, and that was all very fine. But I'd heard that she'd especially taken an old frock out of storage, one that she used to wear readily to the opera. And so that was a big thing. Then she, of course, her wheelchair, I knew was a little bit too cramped for my car. It was a small car, but somebody else heard about this and thought they would be happy to loan me their car, a much larger sedan, so that I could accommodate all this with a wheelchair. And well, finally the night came and I came to call on her, and there she was, looking really quite elegant. I was in my tuxedo, the same tuxedo that I'd had from college, which, as you may or may not know, tuxedos have a problem. They tend to shrink after a while, and this was some decades, and this one had shrunk really considerably. But I was able to squeeze myself into it and called on. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were to drive in about an hour, almost and a half to the city. And we had a lovely drive in. And then as we approached, she had said that she'd already made arrangements for us to park in a particular area in the underground parking at the opera and directed me to that. And so I went there, and lo and behold, there was a parking place with my name on it. And we pulled into that spot, and it was just fine. And immediately a lovely gentleman, African-American gentleman whose name was Malcolm, greeted us and greeted, well, how are you, Virginia? It's just good to see you. We haven't seen you for years, and we're so pleased when we heard that you were coming back again for opening season. And she was escorted out of the car, and my wheelchair, which was in the back of the car, would not do. He had one already ready for her, and it would fit and fine. So helped her in the wheelchair and wheeled her through whatever and into the big reception area where there are many people already very well dressed in tuxedos for the gentlemen and for lovely gowns for the ladies. And there was a champagne reception prior to the curtain. So it was a very gala occasion. Well, eventually it was time to get ourselves ready, and we were taken, I was escorted, and she was pushed in her wheelchair, and 20th row, center, just prime seats at the opera. And we got her all set, and there she was. And only then did it occur to me that this is going to be about a 3-hour enterprise with at least one, maybe two intermissions, and that's a long period of time. And well, I mean, I don't want to be indelicate, but perhaps she would want to use the necessary, and what would I do? And as soon as I realized that, I got a tap on the shoulder, turned around, and here was another lovely lady, an African American lady who had a white, a dark dress on, short dress, and then a sort of a collar of lace and white ruffs on her sleeve, and handed me a card and said that if it's needs to any assistance during the interval, just wave this card and I'll be right at hand. And lo and behold, that was the case. There were not only one interview, but there were two, and on both occasions. So the lady who was going to assist her took her there, and off we went. And then we back, not right to our seat again, because there was another reception during the course of the intervals, and again champagne, and it was all really very elegant. Well, the evening went on and on and on, as operas tend to do. Marriage of Figaro, I think, Mozart, great fun, of course, a gay and happy time, but it's a long, long evening. And especially on the opening night when everything is so ceremonious. So there we were. So it was well after midnight when we finally finished, and there was applause and there were flowers for everyone, and there was just a grand time. And again, an opportunity to have a little more champagne before we left. Well, I didn't imbibe because, of course, I had to drive, but we settled back in the car and headed back home. And the traffic was extraordinary that night, so it was a little bit rainy now and had to go a little bit slower. It wasn't until after 1:30, almost 2 o'clock in the morning when we got back to her house. This was on a Monday night. I'd already had a long day on Sunday, and I'd a funeral on the Saturday morning and a wedding in the afternoon, and 2 services on the Sunday, as we always do. So it was a kind of a taxing time. And well, nearly 2 o'clock, I was just as happy to surrender all of this gaiety and excitement and celebration. And although I was very pleased that we could enjoy this elegant time together, I was ready to go home. So we got there and rolled up their house, got in the wheelchair out of the back of the car, put her in the wheelchair, came up to the front door, opened the door, got inside, make sure everything was okay. And then just as I was about to thank her again for allowing me the pleasure of her company for a truly elegant evening, she said, "It's been my custom, and my late husband and I always enjoyed getting back after such an elegant evening. And of course, there's just so much to talk about and to reflect. I've prepared to have ready for us some sherry and biscuits. Wouldn't you like a nightcap before you go home, Dr. Evans?" Well, of course, you cannot say no. And I didn't. And it wasn't until about close to 4 in the morning before I got home. And I must say that it was not just a night at the opera. It seemed like 3 days of one night, but it was a grand memory. And if you ever have the opportunity, I would suggest that you avail yourself of it, because there's nothing quite like the opening night at the opera. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. It was wonderful. Okay. Let's see. Spotlight. Okay. Now, do you have a story? Do you want to stand to tell it or sit?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can't tell a story in chair. I've done it once or twice.
Yeah.
Usually style.
Well, you have to do it when you're doing Zoom.
Yeah. Well, we do the way on Zoom.
And turn this around. We have this wonderful background for you. We stand right about here. I think that puts you in the screen.
It is, of course, St. Patrick's Day. Now, I tell quite a few tales from the Bible. This one is uniquely my own. I created it out of the common leprechaun tale, Leprechaun Gold. But my version starts with health, wealth, and happiness. One would think that these were the main goals of anyone, for everyone needs to have health. They all want wealth. And if you have those two things, perhaps you will have happiness, although I've known some very rich people who were miserable every day of their lives. Nonetheless, this is what most people dream of. Rory O'Reilly had only one of these things, born with a strong and powerful body. He was broad-shouldered and quite capable physically. But he was known far and wide as Roaring Rory, for he went through the world with a perpetual boil. He was ready to argue with anyone over anything, no matter how minuscule or unimportant the point might be. He was ready to gamble on the silliest of things. He was ready to take up fighting with anyone who challenged his opinions. In fact, he was so angry that the villagers made fun of him. One of them would say, "You know, I only used one shovel of coal last night." And his neighbor said, "It was a powerful cold night." "Yes, but I had Rory over and his hot air kept our house warm for hours." In any case, the business he had from his father was rapidly failing, for he was such an unpleasant fellow. One day, his apprentice made some small error, and Rory went into one of his usual rages, and he got so angry that he stomped out of the back of the shop and out into the forest, not even notice that it was a slate gray day with a steady drizzle of ice cold rain. Now, had anybody else gone stamping out into the forest, the neighbors would have come forward and said, "Neighbor, friend, what is..." Not with Rory. They'd seen this kind of behavior many a time. It took him a while to work off enough anger to realize he was getting quite cold and damp. He turned around to figure out exactly where he was in the forest, and a little ways away, there appeared to be sunshine. I didn't see a rift in the cloud anywhere, but still, there seemed to be sunshine. And so he worked his way over to a small opening in the forest where he knew there had been a scraggly old stump, and it was beautifully even stump there, and sitting on the stump was a leprechaun. Ah, he knew what to do. He crept forward. He grabbed the little man by his leg. He winked at him with one eye and said, "I got you, leprechaun. I want a pot of gold." Little man said, "Saints preserve me. I don't know what to do. I gave away Should I do it again?
Did you not hear it?
We only heard the first part of the story.
Oh,
Then
That's
then
right.
it froze, and then when it reset, it was muted.
Oh no. Well, that's probably when it said recording in progress. It probably froze and then restarted.
I wondered why that was in there.
Yeah.
oh, man.
Oh, that's too bad. It was a great story. You want to tell it again?
I can tell it again if they want.
At what point did it mess up?
Pretty early, because I've heard that story before, and it was only a little ways in when it froze.
Ah,
Yeah,
well,
hey, it's St. Patty's. Tell it again.
are you up to telling it again?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, apparently we're having trouble with the internet connection here tonight. I don't know whether it's because of the weather. We've never been here on a rainy night.
Now maybe I can get my notes better.
What was that?
Maybe I can get my notes better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes? Heavens no. Okay. I've told stories from chairs because of Zoom a few times, but I move. Okay. People in the audience, I will only throw one gold coin this time because it just slows things down. But in the story, I'll refer to golden coins often. Health, wealth, and happiness. Most would agree that these are the goals of life. For if you have no health, you have no happiness. If you have no wealth, happiness is hard to come by. But if you have health and wealth, you are not guaranteed happiness. Hey, for I've known some rich people who were utterly miserable every day of their lives. Hey, Rory O'Reilly, called Roaring Rory because of his terrible temper, had only the one thing, a strong and powerful body. For he would fight and argue with anyone over anything, no matter how silly. Hey, he would bet on which way a bird would turn. Hey, in the sky, all sorts of nonsense would he get himself in trouble with and fight with. So they all called him Roaring Rory. His temper was so bad, his neighbors made jokes about him. One of them would say, I only used one shuttle of coal last night. And his neighbor said, it was a powerful cold night. Yes, but I had Rory over for dinner and his hot air kept our house warm for hours. Because of his bad nature, his business was rapidly failing. One morning, his apprentice made some kind of an error, probably a minor thing, and Rory got so very angry that he stomped out the back of his shop and out across the road and out into the forest, not even noticing that it was a slate gray day with a steady drizzle of ice cold rain. But he was so angry, making so much noise, he didn't even notice. It was a while before he got cold enough to realize what was going on. He stopped and turned about, and as he turned about, it seemed as if there was a space of sunshine a little ways away. He looked up, saw no break in the clouds. So carefully he walked toward that sunshine. He knew there was a clearing just ahead. When he got to the clearing, he looked in. And there, what had always been a ragged stump was a beautiful, cleared off stump top. And sitting on it was a leprechaun. He knew what to do, of course. He crept up carefully. He grabbed him by the leg. He looked at him with one eye and said, I want a pot of gold. Oh, what am I to do, said the little man. What am I to do? I already gave away my pot of gold this morning. I don't know what to do. And he stomped his foot and took off straight into the air, a good 30 foot off the ground, yelling, let go, let go. Rory was not a fool. The little man flew north, saying, what's become of me? Whoa, what's this? Oh, it's the Banshee of death. She's coming up right beside us. She touches us. We'll be taken off to the nether world for all of eternity. Look, 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 she's right beside us. But Rory was wise in the ways of leprechauns and looked not away and let not go. And the little man flew back south. As he was flying over the place in the forest, he said, "Oh, Rory, it is your lucky day. It's King Gaelic himself. He's right here with us. He can give you a magic wish better than any pot of gold. Look, he's right there next to you." But of course, Rory was wise in the ways of leprechauns, and let not go, and looked not away. The little man turned north again, and as he approached the clearing, he said, "Oh, Rory, what would your blessed mother be thinking if she saw a great big brute like you holding on to a little man like me? Why don't you look? She's right there beside you." Now, I'll admit, for a fraction of a second, Rory was tempted to look away, but he was wise in the ways of the leprechauns, and looked not away, and let not go. And the little man landed back down in the glen. And there on the ground next to the stump was a shimmering pot of gold. But on the stump was a beautiful gold coin. And the little man said, "Choose." He looked at the shimmering pot and he looked at that single gold coin and reached down and picked up the gold coin. And the cold rain was falling, and the forest was dim and dark, and the pot of gold was gone. But there was the golden coin. He picked it up and read, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours." Oh, that's what everyone has always wanted all the time of eternity. That's just amazing. But what's this? But only if you pass this blessing to others. Now, what the heck would that mean? Fiddling with the coin in his hand and putting it in his pocket, he made his way back toward the village. As he stepped onto the road, he saw the widow Donnelly chasing after her grandchildren. And he looked at her and said, "Widow Donnelly, health, wealth, and happiness be yours." And he tossed her a coin. "Why, thank you, Rory," she said, exclaiming in joy. He stepped onto the road and thought, one gold coin, I can make another in a month's time. But coming toward him was his best worst customer. He and McGinnis had been at each other's throats since they were boys. They had often come to fisticuffs. They frequently did business, but every single transaction was marked by hours of argument and bargaining. I wonder what he'll be wanting this day, he thought. But as McGinnis came up to him, he felt the weight of that coin in his pocket, and he picked it out and tossed it to him and said, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours." Why, thank you, Rory," said the man, and went on down the street. He stepped inside and noticed his apprentice cowering in the back corner. And the weight of the coin was in his pocket. And he tossed the coin to the young man, saying, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours. Take the rest of the day off." And that was the story of Rory's life thereafter. Every day he would toss to people the coin. Someone would get the coin and hear, "Health, wealth, and happiness," and they'd call back, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours, Rory." For it was found that anyone could buy the coin once and spend a gold coin one time, but no one could keep it twice. But anyone could pass the blessing on. So their days were marked with people calling, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours," and theirs was the happiest village in all the Emerald Isle. Laura, the prettiest girl in the valley, thought, "I could love this merry man." And after a while, this merry man married her. And their lives were blessed. Children came, his business expanded and prospered. Life was very good. The children grew. The years went by. And they decided to do something that was quite rare in those days. They decided that they would move out of their little place in the village and and build a nice house out in the countryside and retire. On that last day, he turned the business over to his eldest and began tossing the coin back and forth to different neighbors as he went down the road with his beloved Laura. And cries of health, wealth, and happiness and flying gold coins followed them to the edge of town. They stepped away and headed up the road toward their new home, and coming toward them was a stranger. Rory knew everyone for miles about. And the man walked right up to him and said, "Health, wealth, and happiness be yours, Rory," and put a gold coin in his hand. The two of them walked out to their new home. When they opened the door, there on the counters and the floor were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beautiful gold coins, one for each time they'd given away the magic coin. Can that be the way of gold? It is wealth. You might use it to buy some health. But if you're not willing to share, no happiness will you ever find. And may health, wealth, and happiness be yours.
Thank you, Ron, again. So did that come through loud and clear? Okay, good. All right, so I think Adrian said she's driving in a car somewhere. I think she's going to be telling a story. I have a story, and it's an Angela Lloyd story. And I've been practicing it, but I didn't spend enough time practicing it, so we'll see how it goes. But if it goes well, and I want some feedback at the end, I might use this story on Saturday. Long, long time ago in Japan, there lived a man and a woman that had two daughters. The older daughter tragically died in a drowning accident. And after that happened, the mother and father embraced the younger daughter and held her physically a lot, and with their love a lot. They didn't want to lose her, and she became all the more precious with the absence of the older daughter. And the younger daughter's name was Senjo. And at first, Senjo had a really, really hard time dealing with the loss of her sister. They had been close. But over time, she dealt with the grief and grew into her own being. And she had a friend at school. And it was a young boy. And they became very, very close friends. And he helped her blossom as a person. They helped each other. And they would play together a lot. And as they grew older, the villagers would look at the two of them and say, maybe someday they might make a good married couple. Well, Senjo's father had other ideas. In that place, in that time, it was customary for the father to arrange the wedding of the daughter and to pick someone to marry her. And he knew nothing about the growing relationship between the young man and Senjo. And so when she turned 18 years old, the father had found an older gentleman from another village that he thought would be a suitable match. And he invited the man over to their house and introduced him to Senjo. And that was the first Senjo had any inkling that her father had arranged this marriage. And of course, she was devastated. But she was resigned to the fact that those were the customs of the day. And she felt that she had to let her sweetheart know what was happening. So the next day, she left home and she went to visit her sweetheart and told him they were not going to be able to build happiness in a long life together the way they had dreamed of doing, because her father had arranged a marriage for her and she was bound to honor the customs of the day and accept that as her fate. Well, when her sweetheart heard this news, he realized he couldn't stick around and stay in that village. It would hurt him very much to see the woman he loved living with another man. So right away, he packed up his belongings, put all of his clothes into cloth bags, and took his stuff to the river by the village. And he had a long boat, and he loaded his stuff into the boat. He had a long pole to steer and propel the boat, and he took off upstream to find another place to live. Well, after about 2 hours, he heard the sound of someone running parallel to the river on a path. He heard the footfalls, and so he pulled off and docked the boat at the side of the river. And out of the woods came running Senjo, and she said, "I've come to be with you. I realized I could not stand to marry that stranger, that old man stranger that my father had picked. I want to go with you." And so he said, "Well, jump on into the boat." And so she did. She joined him in the boat. They went further up the river, found a village to settle in. They got married. They had 2 daughters. And I wanted to see if I lost my audio, but I think I'm still good. They had 2 daughters, and after 6 years, Senjo told her husband, "I want to go back to our home village and introduce our children to their grandparents. I want to tell my mother and father what we have done and introduce their grandchildren to them." So he said, "Sure." So the next day, they all got into the boat and went downstream this time. And when they got close, the young husband began to worry. "I can go by myself and tell your father we have come to visit and see how he reacts. And then I'll come back and get you." And so she agreed to that. She stayed in the boat. And he went into the village and went up to the house and knocked on that familiar old door. And when the door opened, there was the father. And he appeared to have aged more than 6 years. He was aged not just from time, but from some heavy sorrow. And there was shock on him. Okay, I think I'm back now. So he said, "We have brought our 2 daughters to introduce you to your granddaughters." And the father had this perplexed look on his face and said, "What in the world are you talking about? Senjo, my youngest daughter, has been sick in bed for 6 years. She's here. What in the world are you talking about?" And the young husband was startled. He said, "I'm going to go back to the boat and bring her and the kids here to meet you." And the old man scowled and he just slammed the door. So the young husband went back to the boat, got Senjo and the two daughters, and they went back into the village, and he knocked on the door again. And the door opened, and there was the old man. And he said, "Why have you come back again?" And Senjo just walked right past her father without him noticing. And she went to her bedroom, opened the door, and saw in the bed, there was Senjo sick in bed. And the Senjo in bed opened her eyes and saw the woman standing in the doorway and started to make motion to get out of bed, pulled the covers back and put her feet on the floor. And the two of them walked towards each other and they became one. Now, this particular story has a back. I'll turn the audio back on. Not sure where it cut me off, but let me explain.
It was at the very end of the story where you were going into the afterward.
Yeah, so a koan is a sentence or two that you can meditate on. And this particular story has a koan that goes with it. And what it says is, Senjo was separated from her soul. Which one was the true one? That's the story.
Ooh, good. You'd rather reflex Saturday. You just got you.
Now, when Angela told it, she then related an experience she had where she was frantic and she was kind of going through the motions of doing something. And then it occurred to her, she was acting like she was sick in bed and it was a beautiful day out and she should start to enjoy it and go upstream and have a family, so to speak. And then that epiphany helped her to have a better day that day. So I'm trying to think of an experience I've had that I can relate to that, because that, kind of ties in a little bit. Well, with all the interruptions and stuff, do you think the story is worth telling?
Yes, I agree. Very memorable.
Okay, does anybody else have a story? Oh, Chris? No? Okay, next time. Okay. Anybody else on Zoom have a story? No? Okay, so some announcements, and I'll be right back. Paper. Take one and pass it down. All right, so those of you on Zoom don't see the paper, but I'm going to read it to you. So, upcoming events. This Saturday, of course, is our spring concert. Starts at 2 a.m. Doors open at 1:30. It's $20 at the door. Seniors and students get in for 10. Chris will probably make some refreshments to have at the end. If any of you want to bring something, that would be great. And it's at the Claremont Friends meeting, which is where we always have the spring concert, or at least have for the last probably 10 years. And then April 9th, I have arranged with this Ontario City Library to assist them in an open mic storytelling session from 6 till 8 p.m. They contacted me. Apparently, the California Association of Libraries this year is putting a focus on storytelling. And this library person was given the task to do something, and she didn't have a clue. And so she reached out to me and asked if I could assist. And so I offered to, and Ron, if you are feeling well enough,
Who was that? Who was that?
April 9th.
Well, my surgery has been rescheduled to the 3rd. I might be up and about on the 9th. I can't be sure.
Okay.
And,
Well,
given my first choice, I can't think of anything in the universe I'd rather do. But getting rid of any trace of cancer and knowing that I'm going to live another year is a good plan.
yes, definitely. Yeah. Well, you let me know. Either way, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's not much of a turnout, or if the people are hesitant, I'll try to get them started by telling the story. And I think Jane is going to be there. Jane lives like 4 blocks from the library. So it might work out if there is a good response that the city of Ontario will give us a room for free to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm open to the idea of doing a second story swap. Still do this one,
Wow.
but start doing a second one in Ontario. I live in Ontario.
Yeah, that's close to you.
Yeah. And I'd love to see the city of Ontario get storytelling. If we can bring in other people that won't come to Claremont, it gives us a wider pool of people that can attend our concerts and keep our group going. So I'm going to pursue that, and hopefully that will turn out. And then April 26th is the 39th annual Southern California Story Swap Festival. And I'm sorry to say they have not sent out registration materials yet. They were supposed to do that March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
It's Storytellers of San Diego. I mean, they're all
Same
over.
library?
It's going to be at a place I've never been to, Palomar Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Vista. So Vista is in northern San Diego, which means it's not as long a drive.
Closer.
Much closer. Yeah, which is nice. And it's going to be a traditional story swap festival, except for 2 things. It starts with a California Association of Storytellers, SAC, is having a board meeting there.
Cool.
So all the board members are going to come down. I don't know if all of them are, but there will be board members, and they will start that off, which I'm sure people will be welcome to attend. And then the normal thing with the story swap groups and the workshops. And then in the afternoon, in addition to the traditional end of the day concert, where a representative from every group tells a story, they're giving me an hour to tell stories. So that's one of the perks of me being named the Storytelling Gem of 2025. I get to do that.
So we don't have times on here. I'm getting confused. So the board meeting I don't have to go to, but it.
No, so the regular thing will start at 10.
Okay.
Like I say, they have not sent out registration
I
materials yet.
saw one thing, not just what you said, but I saw one thing, but not registration.
Right.
Announcement.
So I don't know how much they're charging. It is going to include lunch again, but I don't know what they're charging. And that group is pretty good at getting donors and sponsors, because they do their San Diego Storytelling Festival for free because they have so many sponsors.
So it's likely to be over with at what?
4 or 5, probably 4, but that depends on, I mean, they're throwing in an extra hour that we don't usually have.
For your presentation.
Yeah. So we won't know exactly the time until they send out the materials. And I might also mention It's not on here, but the last or second to last weekend in June is the Bay Area Storytelling Festival. Is going to be in Santa Rosa this year, which is actually north of the Bay. And I have applied to be a presenter. I won't be part of the main program, but they do choose 4 or 5 people from members of SAC, and I'm a member of SAC, to tell one story. So I've applied for that. And
Fun. They have to get, what was the date on that?
oh, it's June 20th something. It'll be on a Saturday in June. I don't have a calendar with me, but it's
That's all right. Hey, we are going to Oregon in June. My niece, Robin's niece, who's quite close to us, is graduating from college. And so we're planning, and I would have no trouble talking Robin to let me spend a day in San Francisco. I mean,
yeah, Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa, wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Hey, we're driving and we do not drive more than about 300 miles a day. And so it'll take us a few days to get wherever we're going.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll have more information about that later. And they make the decision on who is chosen on April 5th. So I'll find out sometime after that whether I was chosen or not. I think the odds are maybe good because I'm the storytelling gem of 2020.
That would help.
Yeah. Anyway, Nick, do you have any, let me get this.
Well, I thought I'd remind people that the genre storytelling thing from SAC is the next one is coming up in just a couple of days.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Yeah, the Wednesday of this month, and then the third Wednesday of next month, I'll be doing one of the things because that's the historical history stories next month. I'll be doing something for that. I forget who the tellers are for this month because I saw the listing and then it was in such a huge email that I had to delete it for the space. So I haven't looked back at the website yet to see who's actually telling this month. But they've been getting a good assortment of storytellers each month. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Unfortunately for me, it's the third Wednesday of every month. And the third Wednesday of every month, I'm hosting a Zoom meeting for the Sierra Club.
Yep.
Yeah. So you'll be able to watch it delayed, but not do the thing itself,
Right.
probably.
Yeah, I did one time get someone else to take over my role as the Zoom host for Sierra Club, and I told a story.
Hmm.
That takes special arrangements on my part, and I don't
Yeah.
usually get my act together.
I fully understand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to stop the recording. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. I think I'm going to have to do a lot of editing.
Thank you.
Yeah, a little cut and pasting here.
Yeah, and that's not going to be fun.